so much for the kind introduction, Ronin and Tim. Thank you for the invitation. I was actually looking forward to this presentation. I've been following a lot your content for quite a long time right already. So you're very well known community in the in media in terms of data and data presentation. So I'm very happy to be here. So yes, I am going to present this session beyond business intelligence, Power BI as a data science tool. Let me see what that means. What do I mean by that? Let's start with a little intro about myself. This is myself. I'm a Microsoft MVP since 2019. Actually, if everything goes well, let's see. Tomorrow is the due date for the renewal of my MVP. So hopefully tomorrow I'll be MVP
Yeah,
another
people
year.
people do not know that this is the nervous day for all of us. We do
I
not know
know.
what will be tomorrow, but today we can say that we are Microsoft MVPs.
Exactly. That's a good point. Yes. Yes, I'm working currently as a head of AI in a company called Sumamos. It's a consulting company based in Spain, but however, we have operations in many countries. I'm based in Panama in Latin America, so we also cover many countries in Latin America. I'm also a professor and academic coordinator of artificial intelligence in a Central American university, Universidad Nacional de Ingeniería, National Engineering University, in one of Central American countries. And I'm also the author of the book called Machine Learning in Power BI with R and Python. So my website, because I self-publish myself and my books, and I also publish in other MVP's books. You can find all those details. That book is in English also, in Spanish and English, and I'm producing one in Portuguese. But my website is mlbi.io, as simple as that. That's my LinkedIn. If you want to connect with me, somebody from the audience is willing to connect with me, just find myself as a Pablo Moreno, and I'll show up. Anyway, thank you very much for for the invitation. Let's give some background. How to use Power BI as machine learning tool. Before we get into that, let me put some background into here. So when we are being using Power BI, usually has been used. Power BI has been used as a reporting and business intelligence tool. We all know that, but what that exactly means in terms of data analytics. What we see here is a portion of what is called is a very well-known figure introduced in the industry. It says that actually it's the analytics maturity process for data analysis. So data analysis has different stages. As you can see, we go from the raw data and we start adding different values, transformations, and infrastructure and techniques, etc. To data. So data is going through a process of from the raw data to clean data. We create standard reports in order to standardize certain specifics of data and data points. We aggregate those data points in order to understand one fundamental question. No matter what reports are you producing, the only fundamental question that any report is answering is to understand what happened in the past. That's it. As simple as that. So regardless if you are using a financial report, a sales report, a purchase report, whatever report you want, what you're doing is just consolidating historical data into one place in a very specific structure that can be consumed and understood by any analyst. So, and again, the fundamental question behind reporting is just understand what happened in the past. So once those reports start being aggregated, data start grows, and obviously we move towards more consolidating and ad hoc reporting, we start identifying along the time in those reports certain trends and patterns. So once we understand those patterns, we start figuring out and identifying relationships between the different data points. So when we start identifying those relationships, because of the aggregation and the consolidation of those reports, we enter into space of business intelligence or agile business intelligence in any way, which the fundamental question of business intelligence, regardless of where are you applying business intelligence, we know that we're applying business intelligence in many areas, is to understand why things happened. Okay, so reporting, fundamental question is what happened in the past. Business intelligence, understanding why this happened in the past. So, and that means that from a data analytics standpoint, obviously not from a human assumption standpoint. So if we sell more in this specific period of the year, how do we understand why? Because there is an increase of the traffic, or because there is a marketing campaign that usually triggers regularly and certain patterns. So in other words, it's data responding questions from data. That's what business intelligence is all about. Well, all of that reporting and business intelligence is the usual usage of Power BI as a tool for understand basically any historical data aggregation. But there is one more thing that you can do, or we can do to Power BI when we add what I like to call the two superpowers called R and Python. We can do this too. I mean, instead of moving from what happened and why it happened, which is historical understanding, we can also start figuring out what can happen in the future and how to optimize decision and actions in the present about the future. This is when we add, as I said, R and Python languages to Power BI. So Power BI now it becomes a tool for data science. Obviously, it's not like a full data science tool like any other in the market. It has their own limitations, obviously, because it never was designed as a data science tool, but it can be used as a data science tool. Now, let's understand how R and Python works into Power BI. This is important as well. So let's start first understanding what is R and Python. R and Python are two programming languages, are basically two programming languages. R is a programming language that was designed and invented by statisticians for statisticians. So it's not a programming language that you can use, for example, to program or develop a website or a server or a cloud computer. No, it's not. That's not the purpose for R. Okay, so because it's a language that was invented not by software developers, not software engineers. It was invented and developed by statisticians for statisticians. You must guess it's an easy, simple, and flexible language. It is true, especially if you are coming from a background that is not related to software or IT at all. It's a very good starting point for understanding how a programming language works, because it's a very simple functional based type language. So it's a language that is fast and light for complex math and statistics, which is very, very convenient for data analytics. It's very good. However, R is not developed, is developed only for data analysis. You can usually do anything else aside of data analysis. So that's the con. But anyway, it was not the main purpose when it was invented. Now, in terms of high intense calculus, sometimes, even though R is extremely powerful and you can do deep learning with R and everything, sometimes with high intense calculus, sometimes in very specific cases, it can be a little bit short. Now, when R is convenient to be used into Power BI, in my experience, R is very, very convenient to import and transform data. We'll speak about that in a minute, and we will do some fancy examples and showcases. So don't worry, everything is not going to be theory. So in my experience, as I said, to import and transform data, R is really good. It's very powerful. And well, we all can see, well, we already have Power Query to transform and import data into Power BI. Why do we need R? Well, you can actually connect to many sources today thanks to R that you cannot do today with Power BI alone. So yeah, that is true. For example, you cannot import a zipped compressed file or multiple files into Power BI. You need to decompress it first and then import it into Power BI, for example. Well, you can skip that process by using R, just to mention an example. You cannot connect to, for example, Stata data or SSPS data or data sources into Power BI. Now, you can do it if you use R into Power BI. So there are few things that facilitates the connection and importation and transformation of data. There are some specific complex transformation that are not very easy or sometimes even not possible to do with Power Query, but you can do it with R, also with Python, it's true. So, but it's in my opinion, R, because it's very light and fast, is very convenient for importation and transformation of data. Now you can do very advanced visualization, statistical advanced visualization that you cannot do today with Power BI. It sounds like shocking. I mean, possibly Power BI is very well known because of the visualization capabilities, but believe me, you can do very interesting things in R, also with Python. We will see some examples now that you cannot do today with Power BI as is. It's very nice for a statistical analysis. Yes, you have DAX. DAX already have some statistical functions that you can use to create measures, etc. But there are not very simple calculations for very specific complex statistical analysis. So I advise to use R for statistical analysis. And now, in my opinion, even though all that can be done with R can be done with Python, is true, but R is a lot faster in this process. Now, in my opinion and my experience, by working with R and Python into Power BI, R is also very convenient and is very well organized when you want to do advanced text analysis. Okay, when you want to do what is known as natural language processing, NLP, R has a very nice framework to work with and is very fast, a lot faster than Python. Now, this is R. Let's talk about Python. Python is a very versatile programming language because it's a general purpose programming language. That means that
1 second, please close your camera. Everyone, please close your camera. We have someone with the camera open. Please close your camera. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
No problem, Brendan. Thank you very much. Now, as I said, Python is a general purpose programming language. So, in addition of it being used to do data analysis, data science, artificial intelligence, you can do virtually any other thing that you can do with a regular programming language. You can develop websites, you can develop cloud computing, you can develop I don't know, whatever you can imagine with a programming language or software, like a software development, it can be done with Python. Python is extremely versatile. It's also the language used for deep learning. You can do also deep learning with R, but in Python is especially interesting for deep learning because it is a general purpose programming language. You can embed the deep learning solution into virtually any hardware or any other external third-party application, something that is not so easy and simple with R, okay? Because it's a general purpose language, Python. Now, Python, if you don't come from a software or IT background, the learning curve to work with and learn with Python is longer than R, okay? That doesn't mean that if you are interested and if you don't know anything about Python or programming language, if you want to start learning Python from zero, you can perfectly do it. You can, okay? That's not a problem. However, I find R a lot easier to learn and faster to learn than Python, sorry. So because it's a general purpose programming language, Python, it usually becomes with a lot of dependencies, a lot of functionalities, and the execution usually is heavier and longer. And that is a drawback here, and especially working in an environment like Power BI. We need something that executes fast. So in my experience, working with R is faster than Python. However, Python has functionalities that are very well designed, better than R itself. So in my experience, the best way to use Python with Power BI is using it for advanced analytics, machine learning, and of course integration with all the tools. I mean, you can now have the opportunity. I mean, since, if I'm not wrong, over a year and a half more or less, you can actually embed a Power BI report into your Jupyter notebook, which is an environment for development code with Python, sorry. And this is something that you can do with a third party, thanks to Python. Okay, so yeah, so Python is very functional in that way. So this is about the two languages. Now let's focus now on the considerations on working with those two languages into Power BI. So some considerations. There are three ways. There are three ways that you can insert scripts of Python and R into Power BI. Three ways. Okay. There is one way on the desktop. Okay. There is one way on the desktop. The desktop is where you build in the canvas all the charts and the graphics. And there are two ways in Power Query. So one in the desktop, two in Power Query. Okay. That's the three ways that you can insert scripts of Python and R into Power BI. Now, what is common for all of them is two things. Number one, the timeout execution is set to 5 minutes. So if your code is well written and there is no problem with your code, R or Python, executing whatever the script is doing, if the execution takes longer than 5 minutes, is set like that by Microsoft, it's going to stop. The execution is going to stop. Okay. So that's the first caveat, the first consideration. The second consideration is every single table in Power BI, when you are using the script of R and Python, is called dataset. Why? We don't know. So, an engineer in Microsoft decided to call it like that. So it's not called your table name or my table. It's not called my sales table. No, it's not called whatever it is called in Power Query. If you're using the script, every single table is called dataset. As simple as that. Now, focusing on this is common for both desktop and Power Query. So let's focus first on working with the desktop for producing visuals. Okay. The first consideration is when the output, the result of any script, R or Python, it has to be a visual object. Okay, it cannot be a table, it cannot be an array or vector or number or anything, whatever you want to do. No, it has to be a visual object. A visual object means it has to be a chart, a graphic. Okay, we will see some examples in that. The visualization is limited to 150,000 rows. Yes, so normally we work with much bigger tables, sometimes with several hundred thousand, sometimes even millions of rows. But the visualization produced in R and Python in Power BI, specifically in Power BI, is limited to the first 150,000 rows. Okay, so be aware of that. So if you want to, we'll talk about that, how to overcome that. Now, visuals are subject to filter context, but visual don't filter outside context. So that means that the filter context only works in one direction, but it's not bidirectional. So that means that if you create a visual in R and Python and you have other visuals or slicers or filters, those slicers, filters, and visuals can filter the R or Python chart. However, if you click on the chart, that clicking on the chart does not filter anything else outside of the filter context. Okay, so the filter context only works in one direction. It's not bidirectional. The other thing is any duplicated row that you has in your table in the script is going to be eliminated. As simple as that, because the way that the scripting works, the scripting in R and Python works in Power BI, those two languages are outside tool to the Power BI environment. So that means that when you execute something, the engine from Power BI goes out from the Power BI environment, executed in your local machine, wherever you have R or Python installed, and then brings back to Power BI the result. That's how it works. So that process that going in and out, okay, Microsoft designed everything in a way that they are giving priority to the execution inside of Power BI, not outside. That's why they have all those limitations. So and they decided to limit the visualization to 150,000 rows, to remove duplicates, etc. Now, one more thing that has been better improved recently in the last couple of years, but it's still important to have, is the column names should not have special characters or spaces. Okay. Now we can work with spaces, not before, but now we can work with spaces in the column names. But it's very important that the column names that not has special characters, such as the dollar symbol, the hashtag, the at, the percent, or any other special character. Remove that, because normally those characters, it has specific functions in R and Python. So it is very important that that column names does not have any special characters. Okay, this is on the visual. This is on the visual side. Now, let's go to the Power Query side. Let's go to the Power Query. In Power Query, we have two ways to insert scripts for R and Python. One is on the get data option. So when you are importing data, you can actually write a script, okay, or R and Python. However, in both cases, in Power Query, in both cases, regardless of where you are importing or transforming data, the result of the script, it has to be a table object, table or data frame. Okay, it cannot be anything else. It cannot be any visual object or anything like that. So if you're working strictly in Power Query, the result of the code, it has to be a data table or data frame, or whatever we want to we call it. So when you're importing data, and this is very interesting, when you're importing data, there is no restriction. There is no restriction on data frame naming, so you can call it. It's not called data set, so it's called whatever the name you assign to the table, and there is no restriction in terms of quantity of imported data. Okay, so you can import as much data as you like, as long as the timeout is fit to 5 minutes or less. As an example, I have done some tests just about some time ago now, but I was able to use R to import a table of 42 million rows, and it was working fine. So I never had any problem. There is no limitations as far as I know. Maybe there is, but as far as I know, there is no limitation in terms of importing data other than the timeout set to 5 minutes. Okay. This is on the getting data. Now, on Power Query, the other option is when you transform data using R and Python. Okay, when you transform data. Now, in that place, obviously, again, the column names should not have any special characters. So a void, symbol, dollar symbol, hashtags, or anything like that into Power Query when you are transforming data. Something else that is not very well known, when you're working with R and Python in Power Query does not allow you to merge queries or concatenate. Well, yes, you can concatenate, but you cannot merge queries before applying the script. Okay, there is a little. I was able to do something on that regard, but in general terms, you cannot do query merge before scripting anything in R and Python in Power Query in transformation. Now, Okay, this is the two considerations. Now, just to end up the theory part, licensing. Okay, what type of licensing is required to work with R and Python in Power BI? Okay, let's put it this way. Everything is free. Everything is free. Everything works for free. R and Python in Power BI, except if you're pushing to the service any visual. Okay, so if you're working on the desktop, either if you're creating visuals or transforming or importing data with R and Python, you have no restriction. You can use it for free. If you're pushing this to the service any Power BI with R and Python scripting that is in Power Query, either to import data or transform data in Power Query, you have no restriction either. So you can push data, or you can push a Power BI file to the Power BI service with the scripts in R and Python, and it's going to work fine. Okay, there is one exception, there is one consideration that we need to see, and there is there. However, if you are going to push to the service a visual, okay, a visual made in Python or R, you need a pro license or higher, only for the visuals, okay? So if you create a visual made with R and Python and you send it to the Power BI service, if you want that visual to be rendered and be seen by your customers, you need a pro license or higher, or enterprise, or any other type of higher license. So everything is free except for the visuals. Now, one consideration that also not many people knows, if you're pushing a Power BI report to the service, which it brings any script in R and Python in Power Query, okay, to run the script in Power Query, you need a gateway in personal mode. It cannot be on enterprise mode. It has to be on personal mode. What happens if you have other gateway already in enterprise mode? Well, fortunately, since a year, 2 years more or less now, or year and a half approx, more or less, I don't remember exactly. You also have the options to you also have the option to have a pool of gateways. You can have multiple gateways pointing multiple sources, so you can have a combination of enterprise and personal mode gateways. Okay. Okay, so this is all about the theory. So now we understand how to work with R and Python into Power BI. Let's do some. There is a question here by Solar. Never use R on Power BI service. In desktop, it requires some installation and setup. How does that work in Power BI service? It doesn't require anything special in the service. Once you have installed in your local machine and everything is synchronized on the options settings, here when you go to the options and settings, options, and you have here in the options, one second, here it is, the R scripting is connected to your installation, whatever the installation is for R and RStudio, and the same for Python. I have an installation in a specific environment and everything. Once all this is up and running and set up, nothing is required in the service. Okay, nothing. So no special setting in the service. Aside, obviously, with the caveats of the gateway in personal mode for Power Query and Pro license if you want to render visuals in Power BI. Okay, so that's the only requirement. Okay, now that
may I add just 2 sentences which are
course,
a bit it's a bit off topic, but it's important. First of all, I want to remind everyone that you can execute Python and R script directly from Transact SQL query.
Yep.
This worked from SQL Server 2017. So this is another thing that you need to remember. And the second point, which is a bit off, SQL Server is designed to work with a set of rows, while Python and R are much better for analyze a value. So in most cases, when you need to do a loop, for example, and analyze values, think about going to Python and not using a Transact SQL query.
Oh yes, and that's a good point. I mean, for analyzing data and iterating about data, R and Python are very good, much better than Transact SQL. Absolutely. Okay, some examples about visuals in R. Okay, when you let's do a couple of visuals in R and in here. In fact, I'm using two visuals. As you can see, I'm just clicking on the visual. The visual is just pulling from the R icon here, and I'm pulling a data frame or a table that is here. Okay, and as you can see, those two are visuals that nowadays you cannot do with Power BI, and this is very rich. I mean, this one here, for example, this is a multi-correlation analysis for variables, and I'm combining here both categoricals and continuous or numerical variables, okay? And we can see in one visual like this, and this is a statistical visual, what's the correlation among several measures, okay? Several measures segregated by categories. This is something that today we cannot do with Power BI, okay? And this is just a script from Power BI using R. You can see there are just two lines of code, Import the library, okay? Obviously, this has to be installed in your local machine, in your local system, and then add create a visual. And this is the result of the code in desktop. It has to be a visual or chart object like this, for example, okay? Just execute it, okay? And well, first of all, you have to bring the columns from the table. It's as simple as that. This is a drag and drop thing, as we normally do in Power BI. Once you bring all the columns into the script visual, okay, to the visual itself, you activate the script gets activated, and then you can type your scripting, and then everything renders into a visual like this. Okay, this is a visual very interesting that you can do today. But you can also do this one here, for example. This is another one, very important, very interesting in my opinion. This is a correlation. A correlation analysis with multiple categories, with two sides frequency analysis of the measures. I'm combining two measures in this particular case. It doesn't matter what, and I'm segregating those measures by a category that has three values, which is every line like this. And I'm seeing the regression line of the values of the three categories, okay? And those gray areas is called the error area, which is in a statistical definition is when are the values closer or more separated to the regression line, which is this line here. This is a polynomial line. This is not linear regression. It's a polynomial regression, and that gets calculated automatically on the fly with the script. And as you can see, this is the script. It's a little bit more complex, but as you can see, it's not very complex. So you add the two libraries, then create the chart. Add the marginals. This is the marginal, the two bar charts on the top and the one. So you can see where are the values more concentrated, and then populate the chart. Okay. So this gives us more information and more details that we cannot have today with Power BI. Where are they concentrated? So the longer the bar, this is a histogram. The longer the bar, the more data points are concentrated in that level. So both vertically and horizontally. So that's one of the things. And this is just done with our scripting. And now I'll show you that I'm importing this data using Power Query, using R as well. So not only I'm using the R as a visual, but I'm also importing in memory into Power Query data using R in this case. Now, we can do the same with Python. I mean, I tried just to imitate more or less some nice charts that I saw. And as you can see, Python takes a little bit longer to execute, okay? Obviously, because it's a much heavier language in terms of execution. But as you can see, just let's click on that. Let's wait for a second. Come on, Python, you can do it. Okay, so while this is uploaded, here it is. This is a concentration chart. Again, I'm using a side chart, and this is a correlation plot again, combining multiple charts. Now you can more or less do this in Power BI using the micro charts that you can split by category and everything. That's true, but I just wanted to show you a little example. And as you can see, this is again to import the packages in Python. Just a couple of lines of code just to generate the plot, and then the same here, a couple of lines, and then generate the plot. Okay, basically it is like that. Now, but this is on Power BI visuals. What about Power Query? Well, let's go on Power Query. Let's go on Power Query. I'll show you a couple of things. Okay. The first thing that I'm going to show you is how to do a forecast analysis of a time series. Solar, do we have an R visual library to search what kind of R visual is available in Power BI? What we have is not a library itself, but we have a page, a website that I like a lot. It's called R Graph Gallery. I'm gonna put it here on the chat. I don't know, since I updated Windows the other day. Just go here and you can see which type of visual that you want to render, okay? For example, and you can actually replicate this visual into Power BI. I mean, all you need is the data. For example, you can do this dendrogram, which is a clustering thing. So, for example, this one here, customize circular dendrogram. Okay, all you have to do is just import the data, copy this code, and paste it in Power BI. Well, the code is a lot longer here. Just paste all this, copy this code, and paste it into Power BI, and you will get this chart, for example. Similar to Python, absolutely. You have in the same page, you also have a Python graph library, which it gives you the code in Python for, now it's getting better. For example, let's go to the dendrograms again. Yeah, they want me to buy a domain. I don't want to buy a domain. For example, this dendrogram here, and as you can see, you also have just copy the code, paste it on the visual, and you will get this chart here. Okay, just have fun with that because you have a lot of options that you cannot do today. For example, a dendrogram, which is a clustering model, is something that you cannot do today with Power BI. Okay. So well, let's go. So fine, this is on the visual side. And now on Power Query, my opinion is actually where the Power becomes really cool and really interesting. So in Power Query, actually, let's go to Power Query first. And I'll show you a couple of situations. Okay. If I go, for example, to this, I'm importing this data frame, this table, just using R in this case. So I'm not importing a CSV data or anything like that. I'm just importing I'm importing this data, okay, using a library like this, and just importing the data. And as you can see, now it's because I have I stopped the preview. Well, anyway, so this is the preview, but I don't want to bother here and wait for this. This is the data that I have imported. So as you can see, there is a table that has a column with categories, 3 categories, and it has 7 measures like this. Okay. Let's continue because I don't want to bother here. So you can use Power BI for importing data. Now, something cool that I like to use Power BI with R and Python is you can actually transform data and create applications like this. This is a forecast analysis, a forecast of a time series. Okay, how this came up? how this came up. Well, I have a table. Let's actually see the table itself. Come on, oh, here it is, which is this one here. Okay, and here I'm just importing a regular CSV document, whatever it is. Okay, so in this document I have two columns. I have dates and I have a measure called income. Okay, dates. So income per day. Basically, this is what I have. So after I created and I cleaned my data in a format, I mean, changing the date format to ISO, international standards, and the income. Okay, rename my columns, and I insert, and my data is coming from 2015, and my last value is 2018, or no, actually it's 2020. Okay, it's 2020. So I want to do a forecast, okay, based on this time series, okay, because I want to calculate, analyzing the historical pattern of my time series analysis. What is the most likely value of my income in the next X days? Okay, so to do that, I just insert an R script. All you have to do is go to transform. Actually, let's go there. You have to go to transform. And then in here, at the very end, you have R or Python script. So I used an R script in this case. And what I have done is I used the Prophet library, the one that invented Facebook to do time series. And I just insert 3 lines of code. All I do is 3 lines of code. In this particular case, I'm predicting or forecasting the next 90 days ahead of my last day of my dataset. So I generate a new table called prediction, and that table contains my historical and my following 90 days ahead of my time series. The result of that is just a new table, which, as you can see, in my first day is July 1st, 2015. My last day in this case is, I can sort descending. Okay, well, it's going to take a little while maybe, but my last date is somewhere in 2021, if I'm not wrong. But I'm going to stop here just because I don't want this to take too much time. Okay, so when I expand this is my result. So this is my table. Okay, this is my table. And what I'm using is my last date after the 90 days is January 31st, 2021. So my last date was in my historical data set was 90 days forward, 90 days backwards, sorry, which was, I believe, October 31st, more or less, October, November, December, yeah. October 31st, that was my last day in my historical data. So the following 90 days has been produced by the algorithm. Basically, it's a statistical analysis. And I can do, because this data is in my data model, I can do everything that I need. I can do everything that I need, like creating measures, Okay, this is my data. Okay, so those 90 days ahead after the October 30, so 30, yeah, more or less about here. Okay, everything to the right side of this line is produced by the model, by the algorithm, and everything before or to the left side of this line, vertical line, is my historical data. So, and because I have my forecast into my data model, I can create DAX measures to calculate the variance, the deviation, the moving average. I can do as many things as I want because this data, as I said, is in my data model. Okay, this is beautiful. But you can do also, this is with R, but you can do the same thing with Python to do more complex things like machine learning or artificial intelligence. So in this case, for example, I'm using here, I wanted to, I just imported data. This is the Microsoft stock, yeah, that I pulled from Yahoo Finance, and I wanted to identify when the volume of the shares transacted every day was an anomaly for any reason. But I wanted to consider the open value of the share, the close value of the share, and the high and the low points of the share on that day. So how to do that? So as let's go to Power Query. This is another case. So in Microsoft, okay, I don't want to project. I am, as you can see, I'm importing the data directly from the Yahoo Finance website. So I'm not doing any manual importation or anything. So I just change and run my, I just clean all my data first, and etc. And then I run my script. Oh, I know what it is. I know what happens. Yeah. So I run my script. So all I'm doing is just using importing a package to detect anomaly, everything that goes outside of the 10% of the normality of the volume, using an isolation forest model against my data set. Okay, so I know what's happening. I'll fix it in a moment. Then expanded the value, created. Let's fix this up in a minute. So not now. Okay, I know what's happening. It's because I am pointing to another virtual environment where this package is not installed. So I'm gonna click here, close. This package is here. Click OK, click OK, and should be fine now. Microsoft. It's missing the package, but I haven't done something. I may have to run the script or something. It doesn't matter. Anyway, expanded the value, created, I just clean my data. The end result of this data set is this. Let me show you. Is this, okay? So I have my data, my 4 columns, and I have one extra column that is created by the algorithm indicating when there is an anomaly and when it's not an anomaly. So if it's 0, it means it is within the normality. If it's 1, it is an anomaly. So a value on the volume that is outside 10% for excess or under the value of the normality of the volume that day, considering day, month, year, when is the open, when is the high value, the low value, and the close value. Okay, so all of that is here. So my result is when I did this analysis, for example, as you can see in this chart under here. Okay, everything that I see in red is the day that was an anomaly. Okay, anomaly high or anomaly low. Okay, and it shouldn't be for any reason, because maybe because it's a stock market, because that day something happened unusual that altered the normal situation for the volume of shares, depending on the price and the value of the share in the market. Okay, so that helped me. For example, this analysis helped me to identify, for example, if that day was there was a very high volatility, or any hedge fund, for example, tried to enter the market or leave the market, leaving millions of shares that day on the stock market for a share. I mean, it's something that you can do outside. So as you can see, again, this is transforming your data with Python into Power Query. Okay. Very good. This is just a very little example. You can do a lot of things like forecasting, like predictions, like machine learning in production, everything that you can do using R and Python, of course, considering and obviously keeping in mind all those limitations that you have by working in Power BI. But now you understand that if you add R and Python to your tool set and you combine it with Power BI, you can do a lot more than the usual usage of Power BI, like understanding what happened and why it happened. Now you can understand, or you can figure out what can happen, what is the most likely event to happen in the future, based on historical patterns, of course. Okay, that is the end of my presentation. Any comment, any feedback?
Very interesting. It's a very powerful tool. It's like a mini machine learning.
Yes.
A full machine. It's great.
Exactly.
we don't have any question at this time, and let's give 1 more minute if someone want to ask a specific question.
Yeah, I see something here from Gwen. It says it is similar for Python library. Yes, everything works exactly the same. What it happens with R, it happens with Python and vice versa. So yes, everything that applies to Python applies to R inside of Power BI. Yes. Karen, thank you very much for your participation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot for very interesting session. The session is recorded, and probably the session material will be provided as well. For this, you will get more information from Jen, who administrator of the community. So thanks everyone for coming, and thanks Pablo for a great meeting.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. I am actually answering one question. Where to start with learning with the basics of R and Python. There are many resources out there where you can use for free to learn the basics of R and Python. Starting with R, you have the RStudio website, which is the company that runs RStudio, which is the development tool for R. They have courses and tutorials for free. They have also more advanced content, which is not free. I mean, you have to pay. And there are, in terms of Python, of course, there are a huge amount of numbers of video tutorials in YouTube that you can use to start with R, and the same for Python. But for example, in Python, there is a resource that I like to use very much. Is a course about Python made by IBM, the company IBM, which is totally free, and is very good. Is very good. But if you have no experience programming, my little advice, obviously you can do whatever you want, but my little advice is start with R, and then you can go to Python. Yeah, there are many other resources: Code Academy, Udemy, Coursera. I mean, there are hundreds of places where you can go and learn R and Python. Gwen, if I'm new to Python student, do you have an IDE you would recommend? Well, there are many IDEs there are many IDEs. Maybe the most usual IDE or integrated development environment nowadays is the distribution from Anaconda or Miniconda that brings Jupyter Notebook, which is a notebook itself, but is prepared for coding. So that will be my first advice. Later, when you gain more experience, you can start maybe moving or thinking to Visual Studio Code, which is more robust and comprehensive. But there are many ideas. At the end of the day, this is like the colors. You choose the one you like, and that's it. As simple as that. Okay.
Google. The answer is Google.
Exactly. That's why we have Google. That's true. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks a
So I
lot.
think
We close the meeting now, and bye bye to